Brocast is back, baby.
This Brewcast episode is brought to you by the Brewcast Store. Explore a store filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with Brewcast. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Visit now brew-cast.com/store. Link below.
Back with the fire, can't you see the flames? From Deutschland steps comes the Brewcast name. Voices like thunder breaking all the chains. Unleash the fury like a runaway train.
Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to another Brewcast episode. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rate the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast recommends to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. Brewcast also on Instagram, X, and TikTok, where I upload shorts with the highlights of the show. So follow now, Brewcast on Instagram, X, and TikTok. Links in the description below.
Back here we thrive, we survive.
Hey there, Brewcast fans. Welcome back to another Brewcast episode. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe in order to participate in this month's giveaway. Yes, you heard me correctly. We are making another giveaway. It's gonna happen at the end of this month, so at the end of September 2025. One of you who comment, like, and subscribe will win something out of the Brewcast, or maybe a cap, maybe a mug. Who knows? It's a surprise. It's a mystery giveaway. Again, all you have to do is comment, like, and subscribe. Good luck to everyone, and it's a worldwide giveaway. No matter where you are in the world, we're gonna make sure to deliver the prize to the winner. That's about it. All right, let's talk about our guest. His name is Landon Shumway. How are you doing, my friend?
Doing great. How you doing today, Brew?
I'm great. Thank you so much for being a guest. And before anything, I need to ask you, when can we expect to be kneeling in front to our AI overlords?
Man, it's so funny because it's anybody's guess, right? The thing that's so fascinating about this technology is it could explode rather quickly, right? Like we hear about the technological singularity where all of a sudden technology is advancing so fast that we just can't keep up.
Yeah.
And the question is, when does that happen, right? And nobody really knows. But one of the things I like to think about with AI and what we're seeing with like large language models like ChatGPT, it's almost like the beginnings of the internet again. Like if you think back to the 90s when the internet was first coming up, right? It was new and like nobody knew what to do with it. Like you can make cat pictures and like rainbow text and like that's cool, but like we didn't really see where it was going to go long term. And now you think about the internet, it's the platform on which most of our lives revolve around. You got social media, this podcast we're doing right now. Like there's so many things that opened up because of that technology that we're now building on top of. And I think we're going to see something really similar with AI, where today, like, it's cool. And we're just like, we could see a couple applications of it, but it's kind of hard to see. But in the future, like, people are going to build on top of this foundation that we're laying to make stuff that's just going to blow our minds, which is really exciting, I think.
Yeah. Exciting, a little bit scary to be. But before anything, Landon, to give some context to the audience, you know what you're talking about because I mean you work with this stuff. Could you enlighten us a little bit more?
Yeah. So I'm a software engineer. So I work with code, and I use AI on a daily basis to write code. I was an early adopter of ChatGPT when it was first coming out, and I remember one of the first things I did with it was I said, "Can you make me a tic-tac-toe game in Python code?" And it did it, and it blew my mind. Because chatbots have been around for a long time, and AI is actually what got me started in the software space. I was very inspired by shows like Star Trek, right, where they would like talk to the computer, and they had like the holodeck, and like they would just tell the computer to do stuff, and it would do it, right? And I was just like, man, that'd be so cool. And that's what got me into software. I wanted to work with, natural language processing. And once ChatGPT came out, I was like, this is it. Like, this is the foundation that's going to really transform, especially the software industry. And what's so crazy about it is I can get things done now that used to take me a week, okay, writing by hand. I can get that same amount of code written out in a day, which is crazy when you really think about it. Like the productivity gains we get from using these tools is amazing. And so, yeah, I work with it on a daily basis. And then I also use it for personal projects. Right now, I'm using it to co-author a novel with me that explores a future of what does it look like when AI has replaced the need for human labor, because it's just so good at everything that it does. And honestly, as I've been using it for writing, I find that it's if you give it a good prompt, and that's the key piece, is that we have to use the tool with the goal in mind to create something that's quality. Because we see it today, like people are turning out AI slop left and right, because they don't put a lot of effort into it. They just say, give me this image or write me this low content book. And then they just publish it on Amazon for 99 cents. And, it's just garbage. It's like not worth the time reading it. But it's just so easy. And I think people are like, the temptation's there to just, I could just make stuff with it. And so it gets a bad rap, right? I think there's a huge stigma right now with the idea of using AI to create things. Because of that. But I honestly see within the next decade where we're going to see a new flood of quality art, where creators take the time to use the tool to actually like, what can we make with this that's going to make people go, wow, like when they see it, And I think that's the goal with this technology is, can we use it to enhance our ability as humans to create and to be productive? And if we can get that pinned down, that's going to open a lot of opportunities for us as a society.
Very recently, Trucker made an interview with Sam Altman. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I think I saw a couple clips from it.
I watched the whole thing, and what was very striking to me is their discrepancy, how each one of them viewed AI. Trucker saw the whole thing as like a sentient being or like a new life form that is being created in front of our eyes. And Sam Altman was the whole time, I just like feeling uncomfortable about this belief. Like, I don't see things like that at all. For me, for me, it's a tool. It's just a tool. He's there to help me like any other tool. And Trucker was like, no, but people are killing themselves because they're in love with those things. And I think my perspective is that both are true. It's just a different it just depends on your perspective. And that's dangerous a little bit.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, it's absolutely true. And as I've used the tool over the last couple of years, the best way I could describe artificial intelligence is it's a mirror. It reflects what we put into it. It amplifies our intents and our desires as individuals, and importantly as societies, because you can do things with it, whatever you set your mind to, right? I can use it to make art. I can use it to write code, to build applications that help people and make the world a better place. I could also use it to make weapons. I can strap it to, little dog robots with guns on them, like there's all kinds of applications that we could use with it. And it really comes down to, it reflects what we intend to get out of it. And so I think it's very important that we as a society start asking those questions of, what do we want to do with this technology? Because whether, like, it's not going away, it's going to keep improving. Even if we hit bottlenecks and things where, maybe there's a cap of like how good it could be at certain things. Again, coming back to the internet analogy, it's still a platform that we can create new technologies that build on top of this that are just going to blow us away. It's going to change everything. And so that becomes very exciting. It's also very scary. But again, it comes down to, what do we want to do with it? What are we going to create with it? And that was one of the things I really want to explore in my novel. It's called We Can Be Perfect. And the reason I chose that title was the idea of perfection is also very subjective, and it really comes down to what does a person consider as perfect. And with these tools and with AI, there's going to become a point where the question becomes, what do I do with my life when machines can do everything I can do, but better? And anything that's I thought made me meaningful, like as a person, as far as productivity wise, is now been replaced. So where do I find purpose now? And that's a really important question to ask, because right now our society, like capitalism, it's all based on the idea that your life is only valuable if you generate capital for society. That's really what it comes down to. Like, and if you can't generate capital, then through the lens of capitalism, you're viewed as worthless, which is really like we hear that and we're like, well, that's not true. Like we all know that intuitively. Like there's more to life than just making money, and there's more to life than just being productive, right? But yet, like if you look at society from like the economics of how we live for ourselves, how we provide for ourselves, like that's really what it comes down to. You have to have a way to generate income in order to provide for yourself. And so that's a really long answer to your question, but we got to ask those questions of what are we going to do with this technology so that it benefits everybody, especially when it gets so good that it can replace most human jobs, because it's coming.
Man, while we're speaking, I remember I just saw this news today that a guy, he died in a restaurant, and the crew literally just put the guy outside because they thought it was a homeless guy who was sleeping on their floor. And they put the guy outside in front of the restaurant, and they would just discover that it was a client, something like that, the next day, because a student recognized it. I don't know, like, and it just shows, like, just because they thought the guy was homeless, in other terms, did not had money, he was
Yep.
not valuable. You
Right.
know what the fuck?
Yeah, it's messed up, right? It's really messed up, but that's how we're raised in society, you know, maybe not like through family or anything, but like think if you go to school, like everything we do at school, what do we learn? It's all about how to be productive and how to contribute to a society by generating income.
I just
You think
gonna
about yeah,
show the news here real quick. So man, that's insane. U.S. man collapses in restaurant, dies after staff dump him outside thinking he's homeless. Houston police wait autopsy results to determine the exact cause of death. But there you go. It was in Houston, guys. A 34-year-old man died in in the steakhouse. There you go.
yeah.
It's insane.
And the question is, why do we view each other that way? Or like, you know, why are we so disconnected in society that if we see someone in need of medical help, we just don't do anything? Well, first of all, right, like medical care in the US at least is ridiculous. It's insane, right? I think the number one cause of bankruptcy in the US is due to medical bills that they can't afford. And it's like, why are we like this? We have the resources, we have the technology, we have the capability to give everybody care that they need when they need it. But our mindset is so like set in a scarcity world where it's all revolves around money. But money, you have to think about what is money? Like, what does it really mean? It's just an idea. It's a tool that humans created a long time ago, because we needed a way to exchange resources, but needed to trust each other that if I give you something, you're going to give me something back that is equal value that I could then, you know, go trade for other things I need. It's a medium of exchange. But that's all it is, right? Especially now, it's not backed by anything. You know, the US hasn't been on the gold standard for decades. So it's really just an idea that we all believe in. You know, if I want to buy something from you, I have to give you some sort of exchange so that you know that you're getting value out of what you're trading for that object. But somewhere along the way, we started misconstruing, like we're putting too much value in the idea of money, when really the thing we're after is I just need a way to exchange resources with you and have some source of trust that I'm getting the value from what I'm trading. And we see like there's interesting alternatives that are coming about that can still provide trust between parties without necessarily relying on, for example, fiat currency. Cryptocurrency, obviously, is a huge movement for that idea that I can establish trust between two people, not through a centralized government that says, trust me, bro, this dollar means something, but rather, you know, with cryptocurrency, your trust is enforced by mathematics and cryptography. And that opens a lot of interesting opportunities for us as a society when now I can trust people and trade resources without necessarily relying on a centralized source of authority that dictates everything. And this is going to become really important because when you think about where we're heading, right, with AI replacing jobs, how are we going to address that as a society when millions of people are just now jobless? And they, despite their best effort, they cannot find work because there's going to be a massive just influx of technology being able to do all this work for us.
They're
right?
lazy. They're lazy, Landon. They need to take 3 jobs, 4
Right.
jobs. They're all
Right.
lazy. No, I'm being sarcastic, of course.
Oh yeah, no, I know, but that's the narrative we're given.
Yeah, yeah. So one solution that I hear a lot, I don't know if it's the solution, it's universal basic income, right? And but that's the only thing I have in mind. I don't see anything else working because there won't be jobs. Basically, actually, I hear the second solution, but I don't know too much about it. It's that AI will create new jobs. New jobs will exist because nowadays there are already new jobs that did not exist 15 years ago.
Sure.
You know, like
Sure.
streamer, game, like podcaster, something like that. You know,
Right.
so do you see those 2 solutions as viable, or do you think there are more? What's your take on it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And that's actually one of the central themes that I explore in my novel. And let's talk about UBI, Universal Basic Income, because I think it's really popular right now. It sounds simple in concept, right? So for those who just happen to not be familiar with the idea, is that the government will send basically stimulus checks or payments to all of its citizens that give them a universal basic level of income that they can now live off of, right? I can now afford housing, I can afford food and basic amenities. And that sounds really great in like theory. Okay, but let's look at that like a little bit deeper. Let's think about what that future actually looks like when your government like now controls, like they already control so many regulations with taxes and just all the myriads of laws that get put into place. Some of them are good, some of them are not. But I want you to like pause for a second and ask yourself, like, how would you feel to know that not only like, well, I'll put it this way, your entire livelihood is now dependent on the government deciding what they're going to give you. Okay. That gives them all the power to dictate, do you agree with our policies? Are you going to vote the way that we tell you to? Because if you don't, we're going to find ways to cut you off. And that's the kind of future that I think that's like 1984 kind of stuff by George Orwell.
That's
right?
actually today. That's happening right now. Did you see what happens to Jimmy Kimmel?
Right. Yeah. Right. He said something that people didn't like, and now he doesn't have a show anymore.
Just for context, for the audience, apparently he had he was talking about Trump, right?
No, he was talking about Charlie Kirk's assassination. But yeah, he said something that people didn't like, and they took his show away. And it's like that's scary, right? That's the kind of future we need to avoid. The fact that you're not free to say what you want anymore, without like your like severe consequences.
We're gonna just read this real quick. So it's Disney. Disney's behind it all.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me.
Oh, I need to subscribe. I'm not subscribing to the New York Times just to read that, guys. Sorry. Jimmy Kimmel. Let's see, BBC. Maybe I can read this one. Yeah, I agree. ABC takes Jimmy Kimmel off air over Charlie Kirk comments. You're right. It's about Charlie Kirk. TV host Jimmy Kimmel has been pulled off air indefinitely after comments he made about the shooting of Charlie Kirk, ABC has said. The decision came hours after Brendan Carr, chair of broadcast regulator, the Federal Communications Commission, threatened to act against ABC and its parent company Disney over the remarks. Okay, so they're basically blocking free speech. He has his opinions. He is not allowed to say what he wants, and it was within hours. Within hours, it's 90.
Yeah,
it's
that's where we're heading.
1984 again.
It is. It is. So now, like, that's bad, right? And like, yeah, I agree. We're already there in many respects. Now imagine that same centralized government dictates your entire livelihood and your ability to survive. Because that's, again, if that's money is the vehicle by which I can get the things I need to survive, the last thing we want to do is to give all that power to a centralized authority to say, yep, like I have no way to support myself. I'm entirely dependent on you. That's scary. And I don't think a lot of people think about that when they're like, oh yeah, UBI, like the government will just give it to us. It's like, okay, but with that, they get a lot of more power over your life. And I don't think we really want that. I think that's, first of all, so there's that aspect. Second of all, when you move beyond theory, it just doesn't work. Because what happens is if you just start printing money without anything to back it, right, which is what you'd have to do. Now, some people argue, well, we'll just tax the hell out of the rich, and because they'll be making all the money from all the robots and AI, and we'll redistribute it.
But I mean, the rich are the ones in power that are commanding the whole thing. They do not want to be taxed. So
no, and they're not going to go along with that, right? So there's that problem. If you want to say, well, we'll just force them, I'm like, okay, well, that's a whole different discussion. You know, you're talking about revolution at that point. But like, if you're just looking at UBI from a practical standpoint, it just doesn't work because, again, the rich aren't going to just let us tax the hell out of them. We've always said that. It never happens because they're the ones making the laws. They're the ones in power. So, and then on top of that, okay, well, maybe the government will just, they can give us money and like, we'll figure it out. That leads you to hyperinflation because at that point, like you just have all this money, and I'm pretty sure like Germany went through something like this during the 20th century, right? Where they just had hyperinflation and you end up having to buy like a loaf of bread with a wheelbarrow full of dollar bill, of currency. And so that doesn't work either because again, like the idea of money is we have to believe that it's backed by something. And so if the government is just like now printing money to everybody for nothing, then what is that backed by? What does money mean at that point? And I think society at that point it's just not going to work. So we have to look at alternatives.
So universal basic income is not a good one in your opinion?
No, it's not. I think there's a lot of drawbacks with it. I mentioned a couple, but there's others as well. But the biggest thing is you as an individual in the UBI model have no ownership rights. You have no say in what happens to you as an individual. You are entirely dependent on somebody else that owns everything. And that's a model that,
I was just watching Alien today. In the universe of the Alien movies, it's like that. It's like one corporation owns the moon, another corporation owns North and South America. Everything's run by corporations. I think every cyberpunk universe is a little bit dystopian. Like it's a capitalistic dystopian future, and yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's where we're heading right now, right? It's because the writers who wrote those epic, stories, we see the writing on the wall. They're just able to, capture that in awesome ways that are fun to watch. But it's true. Like the direction we're heading right now is one of the biggest issues with capitalism is there's no limits into how much capital a single corporation can attain. And as an engineer, I can tell you any system that doesn't have limits designed in the system, it's not a great system because people are going to exploit. Anytime that you can get past find exploitations in the system, you're going to be able to use it. And that's what's happening today, right? It was interesting. I've been reading the novel Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. I'm not sure if you've ever read it, but it's basically, it's one of like the hallmarks of arguments for laissez-faire capitalism, which is basically like no government involvement. Everybody should just be free to pursue like capital, make money as they best see fit. Because if they do so, that's going to benefit all of society, because you're going to have innovators, you're going to have people that just work harder than others, and they're going to produce more, and they're going to create things that will benefit the rest of society. That's kind of the argument. It's an amazing book. I'm not doing it justice, but like that's one of the arguments she makes is like, we should not regulate people. They should be free to pursue things because some people just perform better than others. And I think back in the day when she wrote that was back in the 50s when it was published. That probably made a lot more sense. But we can see today, like, that's not necessarily true, right? Like the guys at the top, they're not making society better, but they're still like amassing more capital. And it's not helping like the rest of us. We're kind of, and so.
I mean, it depends on the person, if you ask me. You
Sure.
know, like if
Sure.
you look at Elon Musk, he's a very controversial public figure. But I think if you take a step back, that's my personal opinion, right?
Sure.
There's a net positive for humanity, especially when it comes to the space exploration front. So,
Sure.
and he's only able to do that because he has a freaking load of money. So
Yeah.
I would not generalize. You know, I think there's
No, I wouldn't either. I think she has sound arguments to the fact that some people produce better than others. And when they're given the proper resources, that does make society better. But we definitely see the case where that's not true, right? We see like in the Middle East, like all the guys that are just raking in through oil, and they build fancy towers and they build like luxury, hotels and things like that. And like, that's nice for the rich that can afford that stuff. But is that making it better for the rest of society? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, to teach their own. But there's definitely like better ways we could probably use those resources to have income generating vehicles that others can then, for example, infrastructure, that people can then like be able to build businesses and things, like help the economy further that way. And so there's definitely ways in which that's not always true, that just because I have more money and like if I'm left unregulated, that it's going to be better for society. That's definitely not true, because, whether it's obviously we deal with pollution, we're dealing with, global warming. These are all the effects of unregulated capitalism where, hey, I'm generating capital, I'm producing goods and services, but what's the impact for the environment? What's the impact for society in 100 years? Right. Those are the kind of the things we got to consider. And there's no incentive for those individual corporations to change. There's no incentive other than to look good, like public facing, to say, hey, we have greenhouse credits, or like we're reducing greenhouse emissions, which again, they're just like, they're just passing the buck around to somebody else.
You know what I love? When there's the Pride Month and they all just change their logos to the rainbow logo. And now that there's a new administration, so most of the companies don't do that anymore. It's all a lie. It's all a lie.
It's because now it's more popular. Like it's more like socially acceptable, and they're just trying to ride that wave of like, look at us. And it's like, dude, where were you 10, 15 years ago when like people were like being, persecuted and ridiculed for that, obviously they weren't there because it wasn't popular at the time. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like it's all just to save face. But coming back to your point, right? Okay. So if UBI is maybe not the best solution, can we imagine an alternative economic system to capitalism where our incentive as a society is community well-being? In addition to obviously providing for ourselves, we're going to have money. Okay. Like I always find it fascinating, like with Star Trek, when, I don't know if you like ever watched the show, but they're just like, yeah, like we're done with money. Like we don't really use money. Everybody just works because they want to, kind of thing. Right. Which is really like, it's cool. Like the idea is cool. But it's very hand wavy. Like, oh, we just don't need money anymore. And it's just like, okay, but how do you exchange resources between parties? that, because like you got to have that trust there somehow. And obviously, like and the concept of like you have a federation. Federation is basically your centralized authority that can say, yes, we're going to move, starships here. We're going to have resources on this planet, kind of thing. So you could have that kind of concept, but taking a step back, like we're not there, and that's way off, like in the distance, if that's even possible.
Do they precise? They tell the audience in Star Trek what type of society they live in? It's not capitalistic, but what?
No, it's a post-scarcity society. Anyone who's interested actually in a deep dive on that, there's a really good book called Trekonomics.
Ooh.
Highly recommend it for people that are like, just interested in that kind of stuff, because I find it fascinating. And the author, he's I can't remember like exactly how he works with economics, but he dives deep into, okay, how would this post-scarcity society actually run?
Post-scarcity society. Did they came up with that, or
I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they coined that term. I'm pretty sure it's been around. But the concept is, right, today we live in what's called like a scarce society, where there are limited resources, and we have to allocate those resources, and we're trying to do that in the best way possible, right? And money is supposed to facilitate like that ability to allocate resources.
So Wikipedia says that post-scarcity economic. Oh my god, I'm butchering. I'm sorry. Post-scarcity society is a society where all needs are met with little need to work. It doesn't necessarily mean that anything is available for free, but that everybody has enough to live well. Discussions of abundance denial often arise in critiques of current economic structures that resist transition towards post-scarcity models.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, that's actually really cool. But what that's saying is like, the idea is post-scarcity doesn't mean we have like infinite resources, right? There's like, we live in a finite universe, there's finite resources, but it's a society that has been conditioned and cultured to be content with what they do own. Like everybody owns what, like, enough. And what the second part was saying there is one of the limitations with us as humans is our ceiling of like what we think is good enough always goes a little bit higher, right? As we gain more resources.
He did not. How it's called again? Hedonistic treadmill. There's a name for it.
Sure, right. That's one way to look at it. There's also lifestyle inflation is another common term for it, where the idea is like, okay, let's say I'm making 50,000 one year, and then I switch jobs and like I get a really good raise, and now I'm making 100K. Right. At first I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. But I mean, at first I'll be really happy because I'm like, oh my gosh, like I have all this money now. But eventually I'm going to become comfortable with that's going to be my baseline. And whatever that is about humans, it's really hard for us to stay content with where we're at. Maybe it's just like something in us driving us to always do better. But for whatever the case, it's been studied quite a bit that whatever like level you get to, eventually that's our new baseline, and we just get comfortable with it. And they're like, how can I get more?
A buddy of mine, I think that explains why a buddy of mine needs to get the new iPhone every year. So it needs the new iPhone. I was like, bro, it's the same thing. Nothing changes. No, it's just the new one. I need it.
It's got a new camera. It's got new cameras on it, man.
It's orange now.
Yeah. And that's I honestly believe that is a conditioned behavior in our society. Why are we conditioned that way? Where does that come from? Maybe part of it's biology, right? Maybe like we've lived so long in like scarcity, like our ancestors, right? Like they were constantly foraging for like food and shelter and just stuff, right? So it could be biology, but I honestly think a big part of it is we live in a society that thrives on consumerism. Capitalism must have consumers in order for money to circulate, right? And so a big part of that is we're conditioned to buy things constantly, advertisements, just anything that can say, look at this, you need this, you deserve this. Like it's all about, oh, I'm not good enough unless I have some like this next big thing, or like I'm missing out if I don't have this thing.
Landon,
And yeah,
hold that thought for a second. We're gonna go to our sponsor moment, and then we're gonna be right back. All right. Parents, if you've been searching for an app that's both fun and educational for your kids, I've got something exciting to share with you. It's called FunTastic Plus. FunTastic Plus is a free and educational app designed specially for children's ages 2 to 12. It's built by experts, completely ad-free and totally safe, so you can feel confident handing your phone or tablet to your little ones. Inside the app, kids will find a world of engaging content, their favorite cartoons, audiobooks, and songs to spark imagination. They will also find educational games that make learning fun, and all of that to keep them entertained while supporting their development. FunTastic Plus is available on iPhones and iPads and even works offline. So whether you're on a road trip, flying, or just at home, your kids will always have something to enjoy. So, if you're ready to give your kids a space that's both fun and educational, download now FunTastic Plus for free on the App Store. FunTastic Plus, a safe and ad-free educational platform for kids. Link on the description below. All right, so thank you so much, FunTastic Plus, our channel sponsor. And without further ado, let's go back to our friend Landon. How are you doing, my friend? We're back.
good. We're back. Yeah, like I think it's interesting how we're looking at how could we build a future where we're not constantly having to consume in order to have enough.
That's not possible. Just sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
Well, no, I want to hear your thoughts. Why is that not? No, for real. I am genuinely curious. Why is that not possible?
Because a few gentlemen got together a few years ago and created this consortium. I think that's how it's called, about the light bulb. They realized that they're not making money out of the light bulb because it would never burn, and they said, no, we need to create planet how it's called again? I don't know. Planet obsolescence. That's how you pronounce it?
I'm not familiar with that term.
So maybe I'm translating from Portuguese, where they call it obsolescência programada, something like that. In other terms, in other words, basically, they made the light bulb suck, so it would burn after a certain amount of hours and would make everyone buy a new one again. They created capitalism in a way.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's because of those guys. That's my answer.
Yeah. But for every person that's trying to exploit society for their own personal gain, there's also individuals that are trying to make the world better for society.
Obsolescence. That's how you say it. Anyway.
Gotcha.
Go ahead.
And so, okay, so that's interesting, right? Because I think what I'm hearing from that is we are incentivized right now to seek our personal gain before people around us. Right? Would you agree? Like, that's where capitalism incentivizes competition and working against each other, because the idea is like, if I get more, you get less. Right? And that's kind of the thing we're told within the system, is that there's not enough to go around. Like, we have to, you got to work hard, and you got to make stuff that like builds security for you, gets you lots of money, because that's where your value is going to derive from. But what if there was another way that we could generate income, not by an individual's accomplishments, but through collective ownership of artificial intelligence? Okay. And that was the concept that I wanted to explore in my novel. And the term I coined for it is automationism. Okay. It's an alternative hypothetical economic system to capitalism that becomes available to humanity once our tools become as intelligent as we are and have the ability to do the work that we do today. And what's really fascinating about this is I was exploring this, and I did a lot of research into like how this model would work. And if you could change the incentives of a society for how we make our living, you can change the very behavior and how we treat one another. Because now you are not my enemy. We are not competing against each other in terms of on the economic playfield. Now we are partners. And the vehicle through which we become partners is artificial intelligence. And you and I are going to co-own this tool, this machinery, and it is going to generate the income for us, and we are both going to profit off of that labor that is performed by AI. And so this concept, automationism, I really think could provide an alternative for society. But it has to start with us changing the way that we view what is possible with money and sharing resources. Okay. So if you'll humor me, let's just walk through what this looks like at scale. Okay. So publicly traded companies, right? Like today I could go on a brokerage like Robinhood and I could go buy a piece of a company and I'm now part owners of that company. If that company gives dividends, I get a portion of those dividends per share that I own. Okay. So what if we applied that concept of I own a share of something that generates income, and I take that and I move it towards the concept of a local community. Okay. Let's just think of like a town. All right. If we were to merge the concept of a publicly traded company and a town, you get this really interesting mechanism by which this area that I live in, it has some sort of industry, whether that's agriculture, whether that's industrial, manufacturing, something that generates income. Okay. But the labor that is performed to generate that income is all done by artificial intelligence. So AI has still replaced us in our need to work. Okay. But now the difference is, instead of me just being that worker that got displaced and now I have no way to generate a living for myself, what if instead I was a shareholder in that industry that is, again, managed by this town? Okay. And by me being a part shareholder, I receive a portion of the profits that are generated by the artificial intelligence. Okay. This opens up a really interesting opportunity because now I have a say in the policies of the industry that my livelihood is dependent on. Again, I've now detached myself from a centralized government dictating what money I get and when. And now I am an owner of an industry that I have a say in. I get to vote on policies on how we do things, how the AI does things as part of like getting its job done. And my community, every one of us, we're all shareholders in this industry and we all profit off of that income. Okay. I've now created a solution where AI replaces human labor, but we're not displaced by it. We can still make a living for ourselves, but we're not having to work. It's all passive income. What's interesting about passive income is anyone who's ever done anything with passive income, you know that the only way to make passive income is you have to own something that generates income that you then collect a portion of. That's what passive income is. It is an income generating vehicle that makes money. I don't have to be there to babysit it 24/7, and I still get a portion of that income. Most of us are used to our whole lives, we trade time for money. That's the only way we know how to make money, is that I have to go to a job, my 9-to-5 job, I have to trade that time, and then I get a paycheck at the end of it, right? That model is not going to work when AI does your job better than you can, because you will no longer be able to trade time for money, because time will become the greatest resource that humanity's ever had. Because coming back to, again, if I could do a job in a day what used to take me a week, I now have a surplus of time. And if you know anything about, like economics, supply and demand, as the supply of something goes up, its value goes down because it's easier to get. So we're no longer going to be able to trade time for money. We're going to have to move towards passive income. And again, coming back to, if you're going to do that, you have to own something. You have to be an owner of something that's generating income that you take a portion of. So this all comes back to the idea of...
Let me stop you for a second.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I know I'm talking quite a bit.
No, it's okay. Could you give me some examples of those industries that will utilize AI? Because the vibe that I'm getting from what you're telling me is that basically all companies will use AI.
Right. Yeah, they will. And eventually, now I want to stress that this concept of automationism is not really possible today. It's a hypothetical economic system because AI has not gotten to the point that it can completely replace human labor, right?
But even
But
then,
there,
there's like China is coming out with all of those humanoid robots. Even if you go on Instagram now, there's this bot. I'm not sure if you've seen it. He's just it's hilarious. He just goes on in the streets and tell jokes and has this funny laugh. But anyways, don't you think that even those companies that still require human labor nowadays will soon be dependent on robots? Then
absolutely.
not even humans will be needed there.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And what does that look like, right? Basically, what that comes down to is you have a top level of management, minimal oversight, and they give the directives to the AI, and the AI carries out whatever it is they want to do. Again, AI is a mirror. So whatever that company, like whatever their goal, their mission statement is, like they're going to use AI to do it. But the point I'm trying to make here is that even if all those workers get laid off, let's talk about what does it look like when the average person now is a shareholder within their local industry? Again, that's powered by AI. By the way, there's kind of a model of this already of passive income where you have a bunch of people that are shareholders over income generating vehicle. Okay. And as I was doing my research into this model, one of the things I looked a lot into was actually Native American casinos. So I don't know. Have you ever? I'm not sure if you've ever been to the U.S.
Native American casino.
Yeah. So maybe you're not familiar with this concept. Let me walk you through it. So in the U.S., we have Native American reservations, right? Where like part of our history, right? When America kind of just swept through and said, "This is all our land now." Obviously, yeah, a lot of terrible things happened in that century. But one of the things we have now in the country is there's several spots where land has been allocated specifically to tribes of Native Americans. And one of the big things they do commonly on this land is they run casinos, because even if the law of a U.S. state states that you cannot gamble, the reservations of these Native Americans, they don't follow the same laws as the states. So they could run these casinos, and it's completely legal. Like there's no issue here.
Doesn't sound like it. I know. I believe you. It's legal, but it doesn't sound like the whole concept. Native American casinos just sounds fun to me. I imagine you're gonna get into a casino, you're gonna see a bunch of Native American in there. But that's not the case, though.
Yeah, I mean, and it generates quite a bit of money for them. It's a great source of income. And what's interesting here, though, now every tribe's. Oh, go ahead.
One second. I just was gonna read to the audience. So we are on Wikipedia here right now. And so Native American gaming comprises of casinos, bingo halls, slots halls, and other gambling operations on Indian reservations or other tribal lands in the United States. Because these areas have tribal sovereignty, states have limited ability to forbid gambling there, as codified by the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act of '88. As of 2011, there were 460 gambling operations run by 240 tribes with a total annual revenue of 27 billion. Whoa!
Yeah, it's huge.
Oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah. And what's fascinating about this, okay, this is where this all ties together. Now, every tribe is different in what they choose to do with those profits that are generated by these casinos. But there are some tribes that what they do is they will actually allocate a portion of the profits to all of the members of the tribe. So everybody gets a part of that income that's generated by the casino. It's completely passive. They don't have to work at the casino. And they just get this money from an actual industry that's actually generating income. Okay, coming back to with UBI, government just giving people money that's not backed by anything, like it's all, like where does that come from? But here you have a model where some industry is generating real income, and then that income is passed around to all the members of the tribe. And I happen to know a couple of very close friends of mine who they were able to leave their jobs because their tribe opened a casino, and they just get this income from the casino. They don't have to work anymore. And that's fascinating. That's absolutely amazing, because that's a model. Now let's swap out the idea of a casino with like a steel mill or like a cotton plant. But all the work that's used to produce the goods and services by that factory is run by AI. But now the land that the industry is owned on is shared by everyone that's a share owner of that local town or that municipality. Now we can imagine a situation where people aren't working. AI has replaced us, but I can still make a living. I'm not destitute now. I wasn't displaced by the AI. It's now enhanced my ability, because now I don't have to work a grueling 9-to-5 job that I absolutely hate just to survive and pay rent. I can get an honest living because, again, the service is backed by something. There's something being produced. But because AI is running the show, I just get passive income from that. And now I'm free to pursue whatever the hell I want. And I don't have to worry about money anymore. And that is the kind of future that gets me excited. And I think we could achieve it. But it all starts with, we have to question, what is the purpose of money? What do we want to achieve with this abundance of technology that we're creating? And can we envision ourselves sharing it in a way that's fair for everyone? Because you have to be a legal owner of it's not like I'm just giving you something for nothing. But you invest in an industry that's backed by AI, and now I have that passive income. So to answer your question, is there alternatives to UBI? Absolutely. But it all starts with asking, how could that work? And there's other alternatives, by the way. This is just one that I explored in my novel. But you can imagine there's lots of ways that we can rearrange the concept of money and resource allocation to benefit everybody.
Yeah, it's a very interesting one. It's the first time I hear about that. So could you remind us the name again?
Yeah, so I call it automationism.
Automationism.
Yeah.
But I see a problem. Maybe it's a problem. You
Sure.
correct me if I'm wrong. The thing, like, I mean, the whole idea works with the indigenous tribes because they all own the land, right?
Mhm.
Now let's try to apply that to our real capitalistic society. Like, everyone has their own private land. Why would I share with anyone else? You know, like, unless another person also owns my land, when we build a factory there and this factory is renting this land from me, then I can see this whole idea working. But other than that, like, there's so much private property in today's, you know, so how do you envision this whole concept working when there's so much private property? Or like,
Yeah, it's a really good question. And what it comes down to is we as a society need to learn how to work together to share those resources in a legal way, right? I'm not suggesting
that's where you lose me, man. I don't see that happening. We as a society learning how to work together. I don't see that.
Maybe not our generation, but I think we may get to the point that we're forced to either learn to share and work together, or society collapses, because this technology is coming and it's going to take the value of human life. Again, according to capitalism, it's going to drop it to zero, because now I have no way to compete against this technology. The technology is going to be faster, it's going to be smarter, and it doesn't care whether, like, I need to eat and I need a place to live. And so you're absolutely right. Maybe society, maybe we're doomed to just be like, no, this is mine. Like, I can't share with you, or I can't work with you. I don't trust you.
I mean, just
Right.
think about Corona, the whole toilet paper situation. It's a good example of who we are.
Yeah. But again, where does that come from? Is it biology? If it's biology, yeah, that's going to be a lot tougher to curb. Is it societal? Is it cultural? What are the mechanisms that are triggering us to think that I cannot have my needs met and your needs met at the same time? Like, what is causing that mental block? And can we get through it? As I wrote this novel, the conclusion I came to is we can, but it's going to take a fundamental shift in how, again, we view money. money, uh, money is not real. It's not. It's an illusion. It's a shared hallucination with human society that this has value, right? Like if the U.S. government was to disappear tomorrow, wave a magic wand, the dollar, like all the dollars in my wallet, all the dollars in my bank account, are now meaningless. They don't exist anymore. Why? Because they're not real. We as a society have to believe that it has value in order for it to have value. And the things that we choose to have value in is what becomes our reality. Okay, so we have to decide as a society, first of all, can we see us working together to build something like, by the way, the term that I use for these towns that are shared resources is a cell. Because a cell, just like in the human body, right? We can learn a lot from the human body and how cells coordinate with one another. They work together and they can get things done without needing to exchange money because they recognize that they're not separate. They recognize that they have the one common goal, which is to survive and to do what needs to, to make life better for all the other cells. They work together in a unified way. Can humanity do that as well? I think we can. I think there's a lot of cultural barriers. I think there's a lot of societal pushback that's going to be like, nah, man, like we can't, we tried communism and that failed miserably. But the reason that failed miserably is because, again, it relied on a centralized authority dictating how everything was going to be allocated. That's closer to UBI, right? Where they determine the livelihoods of, it's like with China, right? During the Great Leap Forward, Mao Zedong, he wanted to make steel because all the other countries were making steel. He's like, we're going to take all these farmers, they don't know anything about making steel, and you guys are all going to make these steel plants in your backyard, and you're going to try to make steel. And it was a disaster, and millions of people starved to death, right?
Sounds a horrible idea.
Yeah, absolutely. But it was a centralized authority that thought they could dictate how to allocate resources, which just doesn't work through a centralized bureaucracy. But what's interesting about like the automationist pattern with cells is now my governance is closer to the source of the industry that I'm working with. You have people that know what they're doing, like you have experts in the field that can get the factory up and running, get the AI in place. And then everybody else just benefits from the profits that are generated by that. And so to answer your question, time will tell. But I do think that humans have the ability to change our mindset on how we can allocate resources to benefit everybody instead of just a few. And we may get to the point that we have to make that choice if we're going to make that shift, or if we're going to just let the government dictate to us what our lives are going to be like. Personally, I'd rather trust like 100 people in my local community to try to get an industry up and running with AI than to depend on Trump or all these guys so far detached from where I'm living and my needs and who I am in my community. That's just not going to work. And so we have to look for alternatives that will allow us to leverage AI to help everybody.
Well, one thing is a fact. We're not designed as humans to live in such large groups of people. That's not how our brain works, We evolved in smaller tribes where we could recognize people, we could see the same people every day. That's why, we, so many people like celebrities and think they are charismatic and likable and fall in love with celebrities, because our brain were designed to see the same people very often, all the time, and this would build trust because they're part of our small tribe. But we're not in a small tribe, we're in a global tribe anymore. So all of those mechanisms that our brain evolved to I don't know where I'm going with this, but you know what I mean. It's just something needs to change. So when you propose smaller communities, maybe that's the way to go,
Yeah, and what's interesting about these cells, right, is they can combine into networks. So I have one cell that does agriculture, right, and it's meeting the needs of producing food.
Yeah.
And then I have another cell and it does clothing, and that's its specialty. That's what it manufactures. And now I could join these cells together and I can start creating a network of these tribal units that specialize in something. They still generate income, but now, like, imagine, like, trust is enforced through a network, not by money, but by relationships. Like, there's industries like where, you know, you'll let people build a tab on like stuff that they buy from you, and you go back and forth because you have this relationship with them. Like, I know they're good for like what they're gonna, you know, what they're borrowing these resources now. I know they're good, that they're gonna like give us what we need when we need it.
Come again? Do you build a tab? What do you mean by that?
Oh, a tab. Like, think when you go to a bar and you like put it on my tab kind of thing.
Okay,
it's like a bill that like I owe you, like I'm gonna pay you back. Yeah, just
trust.
It's trust.
Yeah.
And that's, again, money is just an external proxy for trust. It's a substitute for trust. And once we recognize that as a society, that that's all it is, we can find alternatives to replace that need for fiat currency. We can find alternative, and maybe that's cryptocurrency. Maybe these cells, right? They trade entirely with a form of crypto that is backed by, you know, their ledger, you know, the blockchain. And now I can enforce that trust between my network of cells using crypto. And I can completely detach myself from like trusting on a fiat currency. I can tell you right now, like that concept, like crypto scares the hell out of the government, because they've always been the one to be like, well, we tell you like what's to be trusted, like trust us, you know? And that idea that we can completely, I say completely, but obviously you're still going to pay taxes, right? Like if I have a cell like within a federal government, what's nice about it is it's still compatible like with a capitalist system, but underneath the hood, like I'm still sharing resources within my cell, and you still pay taxes and stuff to the federal government, whatever. But now everyone has their needs met, even if they can't work, because AI does our job better. And that just gets really fascinating, because we've circumvented the need for money by finding alternative forms of trust. And again, I absolutely agree. Humans work better in small tribes. That's why, as I was designing this system, it's like, okay, a cell needs to be small, probably no more than like 100, 150 people in an industry. And it could be smaller, like it could be adjustable. But where we scale, because you got to scale, like to even talk and have a conversation about this, is again, that network of I can now coordinate between all these different cells using technology and AI. AI can track, hey, this cell needs these resources right now, just like the human body, right? Like the human body is fascinating how it knows exactly where oxygen needs to go, and like how to distribute resources so all the cells get what they need. We can see a future where we do that with AI. It's not possible today. We just don't have the ability to communicate on that scale, but AI can, and it can allocate resources to meet everybody's needs.
Landon, but the way I see this step where money is not involved is more into the future, right? It would be
is.
like
Again, yeah. To be clear, we're going to be using money for quite a while. Yeah, we're not going to get off of it. Nor do we need to, right? I'm not saying money is a bad thing. I think the problem with our society today is we've kind of forgotten what it actually is. We look at it as like, if I have a lot of money, I'm now really valuable. Like I attach my self-worth to it, as if like somehow like it makes me more important of a person. That's really what it comes, like those bigwigs, right? Like flying in the fancy jets and like doing all these things, like they think they're more important. Like they think that because they own more paper, more fiat current, more resources, like that somehow intrinsically makes them more valuable than the homeless man. Again, back to that story, that guy who just died in the restaurant, and they didn't think he was worth saving because he's just some homeless guy. That's all like in our head of what constitutes the value of a human life.
No, that was fucked up. I don't. Yeah, I totally agree with that. That's inhumane. But when it comes to money, I mean, I would disagree a little bit on that, because if you let's take Freud for example. Freud said everything is about sex. So if everything is about sex, so money is about sex, and money represents power and access. You have more resources. If you can buy a jet, maybe like you just
more choices.
More choices. You're conveying something to the females, you know, like it's all about sex, all about power. And ultimately that's what we want. What I mean is, like, we want to secure our future generations. We want to procreate. What is life on earth? If you every single life, it's about getting
Producing.
born, reproducing, and dying. So when it comes to money, I think subconsciously is more about that, if you ask me.
Sure, it is. It absolutely is. And what's interesting is, because again, money started as a tool that I could trade resources with another individual instead of having to barter, right? And so now, like, I have a medium exchange, and then somewhere along that way, that money transformed into a status symbol, right? Where now it's not just about allocating resource in a pure economic sense. It now is associated with my ego, my sense of self, which, depending on what your views are about all that, like, the ego may totally just be an illusion as well. Like, and so it comes down to, the better question asked is, what are the consequences of that association of money with self-worth? And it's catastrophic, because now if somebody's starving, like if somebody needs something, and I'm in a position to make life better for them, we're like, well, but if I give it up, I'm giving up my power. I'm giving up my interest, like my self-worth, like, oh, like, and they have billions just sitting there. Well, okay, it's not just saying it, right? Like, it's obviously invested in different assets. But the idea is, like, it's just, there's opportunity there to make life better for everybody, but at the expense of my self-worth being lessened. And that's what's messed up, because if we could let go of the sense of ego, of the sense of, like, I'm more valuable than you because I have more money. First of all, maybe you think that's true. Like, I don't know what you think about that. I don't think that's true. I think you're flesh and blood, like, you're just as human as the rest of us. Your subjective experiences are no more valuable than mine. We're both just humans, and we're both trying to figure this thing we call life out. And so the reason that's important is, what are the consequences if we don't start changing our mindset on, like, oh, money is this, like, it makes me special. What if we could change it to, like, money's just a tool. It's just a ability for me to allocate resources to do whatever the hell I want, right? And once you start letting go of, like, that perception, then it's like, imagine if you knew somebody in your town, or like someone even in your neighborhood, like, let's just say they needed like $50 to pay their rent that month, and like something happened there, they just fell behind, and like all you had to do was push a button and like give them that $50, and you significantly improve the quality of their life because they're not going to get evicted. Is that something that you would do? Would you push the button?
I mean, I guess. Yeah.
I think most of us would.
Yeah.
I think most of us as humans, let's come back to, because you talked about, like, we're all about, like, you know, we fight over things and whatnot, but we also are very compassionate. A lot of us are. We care about people. We don't want to see them suffering. Usually, most of us, like, would rather help people than hurt people. But the problem is, first of all, we don't know how to help. We don't know what the needs are. Second of all, there's people that will take advantage of you. They don't actually need help, but they'll kind of just take your money and just be like, oh, you're a sucker, you know? So that's another problem. There's no transparency, right? Like, the minute I give you that money, I don't know if they're actually going to pay rent with it, or if they're going to go do something else with it. And then, yeah, so I don't know how to help. I don't know if it'll actually help. And the last part is, if the burden is too heavy to lift, let's say they're like, they need $1,000 to pay their rent. Like, they're a mother of 3 or whatever, and they for a reason, they need $1,000. I mean, any one of us are gonna be like, I can't lift that. Like, I can't help with that. That's just too much, right? But if it's not that big of a lift, and you know it's gonna really help that person, and it's easy for you to just be like, here you go, here's the money, and you know it's gonna significantly improve the quality of life, I really believe most of us would be willing to do so.
You know,
and so,
go ahead.
yeah.
Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
You know what I think would drastically help, or like it's a small change that would change everything, in my opinion. um, a limit of how much your lowest employee at your company is allowed to earn in comparison to how much the CEO earns, you know? So there's a percentage, because right now CEOs, they earn billions. There's no limit. They can earn as much as they want.
Exactly.
And imagine if there was like some type of calculation that creates a percentage, like if the CEO is always, guys, I'm horrible with math, but I think at NVIDIA or I don't know, Steam, one of those companies, they made like that, something like that. The employee retention went to 100%. Everyone suddenly started having like 10K salaries, and nothing changed to the CEO. Something like that, you know, like it changed everyone else's life at the company, and basically nothing changed to the CEO. I don't know which company did this exactly. Maybe NVIDIA. It's what was one of those tech companies. And why not apply this as a rule to all the companies, you know? Like the CEO is still going to earn tremendously amounts of money, but there's going to be more fairness in the enterprises around the world. I think if we change that, and of course the CEOs do not want, but imagine if we change that and end up lobbying. Lobbying was not a thing anymore. I think we already solved 90% of all the corruption problems out there. I don't know.
Sure.
Maybe I'm being immature. That's my limited view of the situation, of the problems of capitalism. But those are two things that I hear very often, and I cannot think of why not, you know?
Yeah. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about limits. Again, coming back to, like, as an engineer, any system I ever build, it's got limits. And I know what those limits are. Like, you wouldn't build a bridge that, like, you know, you don't know what its limits are of what it can carry. And right now, capitalism does not have that, you know, because it was an organic economic system that's just evolved over a couple centuries, and CEOs can just get as much as, and again, like, you know, the argument is like, well, they worked for it and like they did it. And it's like, okay, yeah, like they did something really cool and we should applaud them for that. But like, we can put limits on how much you actually, because the quality of life for a billionaire does not significantly increase if they get another $1 billion, right? There's only so many cars you can have. There's only so many homes you can live in at one time. There's only so many like meals and things you can eat, like for one person, right? Like they're never going to be able to use all that for quality of life purposes. Again, obviously they invest a lot of it in other companies and assets and things like that. Not disregarding that, but the fact remains, like, you can set limits to these things, and again, it's a cultural thing where the CEOs can set those limits coming into it before they get big and famous. But like, we're going to build a company that has that limit so that it's not just a runaway train where the CEO has the vast majority of the profits and everybody else is barely able to pay rents.
Yeah.
Right. So we could definitely find better ways to allocate and share that wealth. But it can't be coerced. Okay. That's the problem with what communism did. It coerced everybody to try to be equal, but it did it through a centralized authority that wasn't backed by anything. And it was horrible.
Just for context, for the audience, the company that I was talking about is Valve. Apparently, they have a very small amount of employees, and about 300, and all of them make crazy amounts of money. And because they make crazy amounts of money, and if you take every other company that make crazy amount of money, what's their excuse of not paying their the salary of their employees better? Because the CEO wants more, basically.
Yeah,
but
and that's a cultural thing, right?
But
it's a cultural mindset.
It's a cultural mindset, but I also understand. Imagine, let's put ourselves in the CEO shoes for a second. What if there's a recession? What if they need to? They are negative in their bank account for many years. Something happens. It's kind of healthy to have a surplus in the bank for emergencies, right?
Sure.
For research and development, for stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think you can still have that, but maybe that's to the company. The company owns that asset, right? Like, why does it have to be the CEO? Why is it got to be under his name or her name? It's all just about culture. It's a cultural mindset. And the thing is, today, you're not going to change the mindsets of the guys who have already amassed billions. That's not going to change. Nor should you try to I know a lot of people are just like, well, we'll just make them do it. I'm like, that never works. That just never works. They have the power. Okay. So it's all about the rising generation. It's about the guys that are coming up. They're not big yet, but they have these brilliant, innovative ideas. They should be encouraged to pursue that. And like, hey, let's build a company that once you get big, you're going to have so much money, but we're also like everyone that helps you get there, we're going to be provided for too. And so we still want to encourage innovation. You got to incentivize it, or else, again, so the reason socialism just never works is it takes away all incentives for people to try. Because no matter how hard I try, I'm going to make as much as you. So why am I going to try? Right? There's no incentive. So you have to have people follow incentives. Society follows incentives. And so if you put the proper incentives in place with these new up and coming companies, and again, if we start this idea of forming cells where it's set in law, like this is how much everybody's going to make. Everybody has this many shares. And maybe you have people that like are the innovators, the CEOs that they have this brilliant idea to make life better for everybody. You give them a little bit more shares. So they're going to generate more income from the dividends from the AI, but there's a cap. They can only acquire so many shares before, hey, we set this law when we started this out, like we're capped at this. Now nobody can accumulate too much power. You still have a form of democracy where if enough people want to change something about the direction of the cell, they can decide to vote against even the highest shareholder. And yeah, like we can build a future like that. There's nothing stopping us from doing that other than we have to first ask the question, how can we do it? And then we ask the question, do we want to do it? And I think once we answer those two questions, there's enough people in this world that have the starting capital to make something like that happen. And from there, it's a new way of thinking. It's a new generation that, and again, it's an alternative economic model. It's not like capitalism. It takes some of the facets of it to integrate with capitalism, but we have to start thinking differently if we want the benefits. Who is it that, I'm going to butcher this quote. I think it was Einstein that said like, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results.
Yeah, that's Einstein. Yeah.
I think it was Einstein, right?
Yeah.
And it's true. If we keep doing what we're doing today, where I'm trading time for money, I'm hoping the CEOs that have amassed all this wealth will somehow have a good change of heart and start sharing the resources of society, you're nuts. Like, it's just not going to happen. But that doesn't mean we can't start building the next generation of that future. Because the future is something we build, it's not something that happens to us.
Landon, last time that I talked about that with a friend of mine, we reached the conclusion that AI revolution is around the corner. It's 2027. I don't think we have a lot of time to think about things,
Yeah.
With that said, what do you think is the most likely scenario? What do you think is going to happen?
UBI.
UBI, okay.
Yeah, well, here's what's going to happen. And this is why I explore my novel, by the way, right? What's interesting about the novel is I explore it from two different points of view. There's the automationist society. Again, I've already gone into the depth there of what that looks like. But then there's also America that has refused to adapt. And they stick with the status quo and they say, we got to do something because millions of people are losing their jobs. And they're breaking down like our doors, saying, we need something. This is not working. And in a rush hacked job, because again, centralized bureaucracies just move way too slow to catch up with the rate that technology is advancing. Right? The amount of times they meet and they try to discuss, and it's all by committee, and they just have all these opinions and they can't reach decisions on anything. They're not going to be able to keep up. So what is going to happen? There's a couple of options, and none of them are great, but you either like capitalism literally crumbles under the weight of the fact that like human labor is just meaningless now. And now like human life is meaningless according to capitalism. And that's just not going to be good for anybody. Or the government tries to kind of what we saw in COVID. I don't know if this happened in Germany, but like here in the US, they sent out stimulus checks for a couple months to every US citizen. And that sustained quite a few people while, they weren't able to work because everybody was quarantined. I could definitely see something like that. And the government just says, hey, trust me, we're good on this money. And they're going to that's the lie that's going to have to come out of this because it's not backed by anything. And that's the reality I want to avoid. In regards to it being by 2027, I'm not so optimistic about that, by the way. As someone who uses the tool on a daily basis, it saves a lot of time, but it also gets a lot of things wrong. Hallucinations, or I don't know if you like use ChatGPT or like tools like that
Yes,
much.
I do, and it does get some stuff wrong from time to time. It's a little bit awkward. I saw this guy on TikTok. They plan a trip to Peru or something like that, and the ChatGPT said they did not need a visa. There was no need for a visa, and they got to the airport and they needed a visa. And in my mind, I was just watching the thing and thinking, how could you plan the whole trip based on information out of ChatGPT? That's another level of, but that's the thing. People tend to believe it as a friend because it's so likable. Oh, I can do a diagram for you. Oh, how are you doing today? You know, if it acts like a person, even though it's not. So isn't that like the devil? In a way it is. Like, you know, it's too friendly to be your friend. It's, oh no, I don't.
Yeah. And it's overly agreeable too. Because
Yes.
the companies want you to get hooked on it. It's all about, for them, it's all about usage. But it's still coming back to the idea that it still makes mistakes. And this is critical for us to give us time as a society to make decisions and to figure out what we're going to do with it. Because and hallucinations aren't going away, by the way. It's integral in the transformer technology that runs LLMs. Okay. They're never going to go away. They'll reduce it and hopefully make it more reliable through like external tools where like it'll communicate with other networks to try to like get more it'll have more capabilities. But I'm not so optimistic that it's going to be completely replacing jobs within this decade. I'm hopeful because we're not ready. You're absolutely right. We are not ready for that kind of transition. But we better get ready. And I don't know what that means for everybody listening to this podcast, right? Everyone has different means of income. My suggestion is look for opportunities to start learn to be an entrepreneur, because you can run, like, let's say, obviously you're not going to form a cell or anything, but you can start by, when AI becomes so good that it can do all the work of a human, how can I use that as an entrepreneur to now make passive income where I can still find a niche that maybe like the big companies, they just can't meet for whatever reason. And I'm small enough that I can like, pick up industry here and there. You got to start asking those kinds of questions. How can I invest in that kind of future for myself? How can I use these tools to help myself if I lose my job, right? And for those who maybe have a little more income, then it's like, how do I invest in automation? How can I invest in these tools to start making passive income that way? But yeah, like, hopefully we have a little time. It's not long. I mean, and time will tell. It could be 10 years. It could be 20 years. And maybe there's some bottleneck that we hit and like it doesn't even happen in our lifetime. We don't know. But it's going to keep getting better, I think, is the piece that we need to remember. And we need to figure out what we're going to do with it.
Yeah, just put Apple in charge. If you have Siri instead of ChatGPT, it's never get there. It's never getting there. Yeah. Siri is so behind. Anyway, Landon, thank you so much, man. What a pleasure. What an entertaining conversation. I really like to get to know you. It was amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, thanks for having me, Brew. It was awesome.
Do you have any final remarks? Anything else that you'd like to say?
Yeah, just a shout out for my novel. Again, it's called We Can Be Perfect, The Paradox of Progress. It comes out November 4th. You could get it on Amazon. Just search for We Can Be Perfect. It's a sci-fi philosophical kind of novel that explores, again, where does our purpose come from when AI has replaced all of our jobs? And I'm really looking forward to seeing what people think of it. But yeah, again, thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. All right, everyone, don't forget to leave a comment. Let me know what you thought about today's episode. I'm looking forward to read all your comments. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. If it's your first time watching the show, make sure to like and subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please rank the show 5 stars. This will ensure that the podcast is recommended to even more people and allow me to keep doing what I love. Check out now the Brewcast store, Explore store, filled with awesome goodies from hoodies to t-shirts to mugs. We've got you covered. Stay in style with Brewcast. Embrace the shock, set the trend. Buy now at brew-cast.com/store. Again, that's brew-cast.com/store. Link on the description below. Be a Brewcast model and get free stuff. We'd love to see how you and your loved ones enjoy Brewcast. Snap a picture of yourself, your family, your friends, or even your pets wearing Brewcast merch, or watching an episode of the show, and send it to us and become part of Brewcast. We will feature you in your pictures at the end of every episode, just like the ones you're seeing on screen right now. You can upload your pictures at brew-cast.com/contact or tag us on social media. Alright everyone, it has been a pleasure. Thank you so much and see you next time. Bye bye.